A skeptic is somebody that wants to believe only things that are actually true. We want to use facts, logic, and evidence to base our beliefs on. Now, the opposite of being a skeptic is being gullible. And I don't think anybody would self-identify as gullible or want to be gullible. But what we're advocating scientific skepticism is using a formal method, using a process to evaluate the information that we encounter. We're deluged with information. We have to filter it somehow. We have to have some way of figuring out what's likely to be true and what's not true. If someone's trying to deceive me, if someone's trying to sell me something, if someone else has been deceived and they're trying to pass that along to me, if the government is trying to maintain some fiction to maintain control. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons why people would give me information that's not correct or that's biased or that's inaccurate. And sometimes people just make honest mistakes. We're flawed. Our brains are flawed. Our memories are terrible. We sort of construct an approximation of reality as best we can, but it's never totally accurate. And we have to be aware of all those biases and flaws.
Well, good to hear Dr. Novella using one of your vocabulary words there, Sam, bias. But did you pick out any other interesting word there?
Yeah, so the word gullible is interesting. We use this word for someone who is willing to believe things without questioning. It makes them really easy to trick. So I remember when I was at school, a teacher told me that the word gullible wasn't in the dictionary.
Did you believe them?
Well, I thought about it for a second because it was a teacher who told me and I trusted them. And then I was going to tell my friends because I thought it was interesting, but I thought I should probably check it out first. And of course, the word was in the dictionary. So being a skeptic and a critical thinker means not believing everything you see or hear, not liking and sharing something, even if we agree with it or it feels right to us, until we have evidence to support it. It may not be important whether a word is in a dictionary or not, but it is when thinking about the areas of science, health, and politics.
Yeah, it does take a little bit of an effort. It's easy to check a dictionary to see if a word is in there, but it is more difficult with more complex issues. So how do we start with this? Here's Dr. Novella again.
So whenever I come across a question or a topic that I want to wrap my head around, I make sure that I specifically look for information on all sides. You may be more than two sides, but on all what I think are at least viable opinions. If there's any large group of people or respected professionals or whatever who are saying something, I want to at least understand what their point is. What is their side? And until you sort of sort through the back and forth of different arguments, you don't really have a good sense of who has the better position. And if I follow a good process, I look for as many differing opinions as I can, keep a genuinely open mind, don't prejudge the conclusion, and then see, okay, who has the better evidence? And when you do that habitually, you do that all the time, you get pretty good at it. Just like anything, you do it all the time and you'll get better at it. It still takes work to wrap your head around any complex issue, but you have a fighting chance if you do that process.
It seems to have some similarity with what journalists do, looking for different sources and analyzing the evidence.
And it's important to look not only at different sources, but also at different points of view.
Of course, this isn't something you need to do for everything. Some things are easy to check and some things are not that controversial. But when it comes to science, medicine and health, for example, there are many claims that we might like to believe, but which may not be accurate. So it's a good idea to develop some of those research skills if you want to be a critical thinker. This is something that Dr. Novella thinks is essential for students and adults to develop. But it's not the only thing. So here's a look at what else he thinks is important.
I do think that we need to teach critical thinking as a core skill set to all children and adults, and what's called media literacy. I think media literacy is more important than it ever was. It's only going to get even more important. So people need to understand not just scientific literacy, but critical thinking and media literacy. That is the currency now of the modern world. We all have access to massive amounts of information. I mean, it's unbelievable when you think about it. At the touch of your fingers, you have access to the collective knowledge of humanity. It's amazing. And so the real currency is in being able to find the information that you want and evaluate it critically. Being able to evaluate the information that we have access to critically is now probably the most important skill any individual can have. And that's what now I think like the science communicators are shifting towards. Like that's what we have to teach people. They can find the facts online. We need to teach them how to know it when they find it.
So Sam, as well as critical thinking, what else does Dr. Novella think is an essential skill?
Well, that would be media literacy, which is an understanding of how the media and social media works and how it's being used for good and for bad.
And it's also about being aware of where you get your information from, people on social media, blogs, and websites you follow. So Sam, can you just please recap today's vocabulary for us?
Absolutely. So we started off with spin, which is a way to present information in a positive way, as positive as possible, even if it's not actually particularly good news. Cherry picking details is to choose only the information that agrees with your views and ignore any inconvenient facts. A bias is a belief that something is good or bad, which isn't based on evidence, but is based on prejudices or our own beliefs and our own ideology. Critical thinking is the skill of evaluating and judging how accurate something is objectively, without bias, without spin, and without cherry-picking data. A skeptic is someone who wants to use logic and evidence and not emotion when judging how accurate something is. The adjective gullible is used for people who aren't skeptical, who easily believe what they're told and what they read. And finally, media literacy is an awareness of our modern media environment and an understanding of how media and social media works and how fake news and disinformation can spread.
Thank you very much, Sam. I think you deserve a rest after that. And thank you for watching. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye.